ich dir noch angesäche, so bist du sie aller Ehre. Was ist Wundes hier geschäche? Dass ein Magd ein Kind gebar, ihre über aller Engel Schar. Was das nicht ein Wunder gab. Er ließ sich reinet auf der
This is The New Right, a podcast for the lost arts, reclaiming the literary holy land from the heathen. This is Dan Baltic, and unfortunately, we are not joined by Matt this week. He is entertaining guests who require his attention as a tour guide and raconteur par excellence. But I am very lucky and pleased to be here today with a three-time return guest. He has been on New Right more at this point than any other person, and I can't think of a more fitting person to be a three-time return guest than Raeg Nationalist. It's great to have you on the pod, Raeg.
Oh, it's always good to talk, Dan. It's always good to talk. It's a pleasure.
Raeg needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyways. He is the publisher of Man's World. He is the author of The Eggs Benedict Option and Raeg Nationalism in Theory and Practice. And he is now the owner of a very interesting startup business called Kindred Harvest, which we're going to talk a little bit about. And it's great to have you here, right?
Yeah, well, we've got a lot of cool stuff to talk about. I'm really looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Why don't we kind of jump in with Kindred Harvest, frankly, because that's your current business venture, the culmination of your philosophy and your a lot of your intellectual and creative efforts. And just to kind of I will summarize it briefly, but I'm sure I'll be leaving a little bit out. This is the long way, but when I walk around my apartment, I kind of look at various is this something that is going to give me disrupt my endocrine system, or is this are there microplastics, and I'm red pilled on seed oils, don't eat those, eat whole foods. But I figure there are just so many different parts of my life that I am not frankly I have thought I would pay Ren X amount of money to come in and tell me how I need to fix my, living space to have better health. And so you have created a company where, you're taking steps to help people with this very, very problem, this very question. And so, for instance, Kindred Harvest, right now, I believe you are selling tea bags that do not emit microplastics, as well as honey, which has not been exposed to certain very harmful pesticides. Does that sound like a correct summary?
Yeah, that's a very good introduction to Kindred Harvest. So Kindred Harvest is a new company that I founded with some other people. I wanted to put my money where my mouth is, so to speak, and I wanted to create a brand that would sell the kind of products that I actually would like to buy myself and have trouble finding, but also that I think other people want as well. And really with Kindred Harvest, what we're doing is we're taking organic as the starting point rather than the end point. So, for a lot of companies, and they'll say our product is organic and that's it. It's an organic product. But actually, the unfortunate truth is today that organic really isn't enough. If what you're interested in is purity and mitigating your exposure as much as possible to harmful chemicals and to things like microplastics in particular, then you have to go beyond organic and you have to ask for or demand a new level of purity. And so that's what we're trying to do with Kindred Harvest. So our first range of products is a range of teas. So they are organic. They're third-party tested for heavy metals as well, because heavy metal content is also a problem with a lot of teas. A lot of teas pick up things like arsenic and mercury and fluorine and other, harmful heavy metals and other compounds like that. And then the big selling point really is that they are microplastic free. So I did a big thread about this the other day, but people just don't know that I think it is now a majority of tea bags are made to some extent of plastic. So you'll find that some tea bags are made totally of nylon, polypropylene, other plastics like that. Other tea bags will be made partially of plastic, so there'll be a mix of maybe paper and plastic. And then you've got another category of tea bags which contains plastic in the glue that's used to hold the tea bag together. So even if you've got like an unbleached paper tea bag, it may very well or very likely will contain plastic in the glue that seals it together. So what we've done is we've said, look, there will be no plastic whatsoever. There'll be no plastic glue. The tea bag itself will be totally organic. Our tea bags are made of cornstarch instead. So yes, we can proudly and firmly say that our products are totally microplastic free. And the thing is, if you put plastic in hot water, if you put food grade plastic in hot water, it will shed. Well, there are studies that show that plastic tea bags shed billions of microplastic and nanoplastic fibers. I mean, actually, if you are drinking tea regularly that's made with plastic tea bags, then you are consuming a lot of plastic in your tea, and that's been substantiated in scientific studies. It may come as a big shock to you, but it's true. And so we really are filling a gap in the market, and I think our products are probably the best quality tea in tea bags that you can get on the American market. And we're going to have other products as well, but that's the first range that we've brought out. I mean, one of the things that's been very important for me with Man's World is showcasing based brands.
Absolutely.
The kind of brands that really deserve to be doing well, small family-run businesses that offer products that are unique and of an especially high quality, organic wool pillows, the finest mastic gum from Chios in Greece, stuff like that. I've tried as much as possible with the advertising in the magazine, which remains free at the moment, to showcase these brands that should be showcased, that I think really are models for the kind of brands that we should be supporting. It's important, I think, to create an ecosystem of alternative brands, because we are being poisoned by most mainstream brands. Most mainstream foods are full of pesticides and all sorts of crap, and most mainstream products that you buy, including pillows. Pillows are made with synthetic fibers, and you spend all night breathing in plastics and off gas from the pillow and the nasty chemicals that they're sprayed with, the fire retardants, for instance, which contain things like PFAS. So really, it's been a central mission of Man's World since more or less the beginning to showcase those sorts of brands. And now I've just gone a step further and created my own with some with some backing, and I'm very proud of it. And it's only been it's only been a week, 2 weeks, but we've had a very, very positive response, and we're looking to grow the brand
Amazing.
and see where it goes.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. This is the next step, the next logical step in where whatever it is we're doing online needs to go, which is supporting people who are making the products, be it intellectual, be it physical, real, that we need, and creating a kind of self-sustaining parallel ecosystem that is, what we need. And to kind of like draw it back to just as a very like real illustration of the value that Kindred Harvest brings to you. I was listening to your episode on the New Founding podcast, and where you described the value of the tea and the situation that previously prevails with these plastic tea bags. And so myself, as I mentioned earlier, I do my best to, I know, don't eat seed oils, eat whole foods, et cetera, et cetera. But whenever I'm sick, I would have tea, because I assume that like tea, well, that's healthy. That's like, I'm being like, so normally in my, lawyer, New York, I drink a lot of coffee. So I rarely have tea, except when I'm sick, and I just have, I guess, somewhere in the back of my mind, I've been told that tea is good for you. You should have it if you have a sore throat or whatever. And so to think then like, oh, these times when I thought I was being healthy by having tea, I was actually like ingesting billions of particles of plastic, which is probably quite unhealthy. It underscores to me not only the value of the tea that you're making at Kindred Harvest, but what a job that you have to do, and that anyone has to do, to kind of 21st century proof your life in in the current year. And I would have no idea, frankly, like even where to start, other than like, I know, yes, no seed oils, eat whole foods. But I mean, if you're comfortable, and I don't want to put you on the spot, like what are some areas of the average like city dweller's life where we are exposing ourselves to harmful chemicals or substances that we're not even thinking about, that we're just doing blindly? And how can we remedy that?
Well, I did quite a funny thread the other day asking the question, is the air estrogenic? Did you see that?
I actually did not, but I'm afraid to know.
Yeah, no, I did this study. So I did about this study. So I found a study that suggested that actually the air we breathe now is estrogenic. It's the particulate in the air, basically chemicals in the air, pesticides, chemicals emitted by cars and factories, and all sorts of other stuff. So these researchers in Italy took air samples from 4 or 5 different places. Some of them were in the countryside, some of them were in the city, and then they tested the particulate samples that they took with tamoxifen, which is an anti-estrogenic drug that's used in the treatment of breast cancer, to measure the levels of estrogenicity. So that's basically how much these samples of particulate mimic the effects of the female hormone estrogen. And what they found was that air samples from everywhere, so from the city and from the countryside, displayed estrogenicity, and they showed that there were seasonal variations. I think in particular, estrogenicity was higher in the winter and autumn, I think, because of the lower temperature, then more of the volatile chemicals in the atmosphere become particulate, because they're at a lower energy state in the atmosphere. So it's an interesting study, and it just, I mean, I posted the the Duma Wojak with his hollowed out eyes as the image. And I said, it's over. It's over. Even breathing the air today sissifies you. But I did the thread, well, because it was an interesting study, but also just to show that actually, I mean, this is a really serious problem, and it basically concerns every aspect of our lives. And so, to begin with, I think existentially what you need to do is you need to accept the fact that you cannot totally mitigate your exposure to these chemicals. Like that's a fool's errand. So just stop thinking that you can do that, because you can't. But what you can do, obviously, is seriously improve your health by reducing your exposure significantly. So, I mean, you can't stop breathing the air, but you can spend more time in the countryside, and you can move to the countryside if you want, if you're concerned about air quality and its effects on your health. And, air quality does exacerbate asthma and autoimmune conditions and all sorts of stuff like that. So air quality is an issue in particularly polluted places. But I mean, more generally than what we're talking about, what I would recommend for people to do is to do very simple things like stop eating processed food. So that's a basic minimal definition of processed food would be food that is prepared outside the home, usually in a factory, and is sold to you in a plastic wrapping. And that's usually food. And that's usually food as well that contains ingredients that you wouldn't normally find in a home kitchen. So things like humectants, stabilizers, emulsifiers, antifungal, antimicrobial compounds, all that kind of stuff. So that's what processed food is. And processed food, as well as containing large amounts of microplastics and residue from plastic wrapping, will also contain, it won't be organic, so it will contain sort of pesticides and herbicide residue, and it will also contain all of these artificial compounds, which we're discovering are extremely bad for your health, extremely bad for your gut, have all sorts of negative effects. So interestingly enough, then autistic children have been shown to have higher levels of a preservative called propionic acid in their stool than non-autistic children. And the thought is, well, what propionic acid is basically is an antifungal. And the thought is that maybe what is happening is that propionic acid in processed food, so these kids are eating more processed food, and then the propionic acid is nuking their gut. Basically, it's killing the good microbes. It's killing the good microbes in the children's guts, and then allowing aggressive, invasive species to take hold. And as we know from quite extensive research into the gut microbiome, the kind of bacteria, microbes, microorganisms you have in your stomach has a serious effect on your health and well-being. So they produce all sorts of compounds that are precursors for neurotransmitters, and all sorts of, including dopamine, and also precursors for hormones, including testosterone. So I mean, there are studies that show that particular strains of lactobacillus, like Lactobacillus reuteri, actually increase your testosterone levels if you have them in significant number in your gut. So yeah, get rid of processed food. Start making your own food at home. I mean, one of the reasons that I made a cookbook, because I know how to cook. I have been a chef, was a chef for a very brief period of my life. Cooking is a gate. I think cooking really is a gateway to health.
Absolutely.
Because if you can cook, then you have no excuse not to make yourself nutritious, tasty food at home. You won't automatically reach for processed, prepackaged food, because actually you can make something that's infinitely better yourself. But the problem is that so many people don't know how to cook. People aren't taught by their parents how to cook. Maybe your parents don't know how to cook because they weren't taught how to cook, and you're not taught how to cook at school. And everything militates towards convenience and just throwing something you've bought from the shop in the microwave and slouching in front of the television to eat it. So yes, if you can learn to cook and cook things, prepare things for yourself using fresh, whole, local ingredients, preferably organic if you can get them. But I know organic is expensive, and that's one reason maybe why you might start to think about growing some of your own produce if you've got the space.
Mm.
and you don't actually need that much space. You'd be surprised by what you can grow in a small greenhouse or just a sunny corner of a garden. So there are lots of things that you can do. Another thing that you can do, this is specifically if you're a woman, this is the last thing I'll talk about, is stop using personal care products. So personal care products contain, we're talking about things like deodorant, mascara, um, foundation, all that sort of stuff, the kind of things that women, spend a long time
Yeah.
in the morning putting on their face and body. Um, Personal care products contain large quantities of known endocrine disrupting chemicals, things like phthalates, bisphenol A, PFAS, all sorts of stuff like that. There was a study that I wrote about on Twitter. I did a little thread about that showed that the average college age girl in the US applies at least 8 different personal care products a day to
My
her
God.
body that contain known endocrine disrupting chemicals. Some of the girls in the study were using as many as 17 different products that contain endocrine disrupting chemicals. There was another study that showed that if women stop using personal care products, levels of harmful chemicals like BPA and phthalates in their urine decrease by at least 45%. So, just something as simple as not using commercially made personal care products can have a serious effect on the levels of harmful chemicals in your body. And that's more directed towards women, because women use personal care products much more extensively than men do, but also it's true of men too. So, a normal deodorant, a Lynx deodorant or an Axe deodorant is likely to contain some harmful chemicals, as is anything you put on your skin, moisturizer, all that kind of stuff. So this is circling back. This is why it's a good idea for us to create an alternative ecosystem with products that don't contain any of these nasty chemicals, because really, we
Absolutely.
need them because we are awash in horrible estrogenic chemicals and toxic chemicals.
I mean, to me, this speaks to there's the, kind of at this point even tired meme of like the man who just uses soap and water to wash his face, and the woman is like, how does he not break out? How does he have such good skin? Well, like, I mean, in my own personal life, I just use soap and water and I never break out. And, my girlfriend uses a lot of product, and, she, not that she's always breaking out or anything, but babe, if you're listening to this, you look fine. But it's I think, I can't help but think that probably, I mean, and okay, like fair enough. Walking around, men are not expected to wear makeup. I'm not, my, face is not as accentuated in the ways that like a woman wants to do. But regardless, it clearly, I would assume not putting all this stuff on your face does have good, consequences and, results for your overall skin health. So like literally just, ivory soap on my face, and that probably isn't even good for it either. And, yeah, and I mean, if we want to take this, to the nth degree, yeah, fluoride in the water from my shower maybe isn't good. I don't know. I've read Mike Ma's novels. He seems to think it's an issue. It may very well be an issue. But so I'm a soap and water guy, and I never break out. I think I have pretty good skin, and I have to assume that, frankly, like a lot of these skincare products, um, I don't know. I mean, like maybe it makes your skin look good and, for, a day or whatever, but it can't be good for long-term skin health to be, glopping it down with all this stuff. I would think.
No, absolutely not. I mean, one among many things that these products do is kill the beneficial bacteria on your skin. You have a skin microbiome as well, and if you're constantly nuking your skin with horrible products, then what happens is the beneficial bacteria that sit on the skin and do all sorts of things. I mean, they kill harmful bacteria. If you have a properly functioning skin microbiome, then actually the bacteria on the surface of your skin will prevent wounds from going bad.
There we go.
I mean, they actually serve a protective immune function. So, yeah, I mean, we've all seen. I mean, especially if you go on holiday to Europe, if you go somewhere like Spain or Italy, or France, then you will see the most strikingly beautiful girls wearing no makeup whatsoever. And they have, I mean, there's just something about that radiant, natural skin. It's the sunlight as well, of course. I think it's easier probably to look good in sunny Spain than rainy old Scotland or Ireland. But there is something about it, I think it becomes, in many respects with these products, a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, oh, I put on loads of makeup because I got bad skin, and then you've actually got bad skin because you're putting on loads of makeup, and it's something that at some point you probably need to try and break. I mean, a large part of it, I think, as well, is diet, absolutely, and the average person's diet is dog shit. So
yeah.
But as I say, it's simple things. I mean, it doesn't require that much effort to change your diet. Not really.
No, yeah. Absolutely.
We're not talking about some complicated technical intervention in your life. You just have to want to change and do it. So my advice to people is always, look, actually, these things compound. You make one beneficial change here and another beneficial change there, and a third beneficial change somewhere else, and pretty soon actually your life is unrecognizable. So you can transform the way that you live and the way that you feel just by doing quite simple things. And so that's the white pill, I think, that comes in response to all these seeming black pills about the extent to which we are poisoned by chemicals in the environment. I mean, my intention has never been to make people despair. People need to know how bad the problem is, because otherwise there'd be no incentive for us to do anything about it. We have to know.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, then we need to have hope. And actually, it's not a false hope. It's a real hope. We can do something about it. You can do something about it individually. And also, as I say as well, then, we can make this a political movement as well. And I think the emergence of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the presidential races
for sure.
has been extremely beneficial, even if he doesn't win. I think he's raising issues that haven't been raised before in American political history, and I think that people are really waking up to the extent to which actually we are poisoned and deprived of our health because of the way that corporations and politicians behave. So yeah, I think that we are actually probably on the cusp of some real beneficial change.
Yeah. Yeah, just as an example of how much we are potentially leaving on the table in terms of improvements to health. When it was like the winter of 2022, made a concerted effort to remove all processed foods. And this was mostly actually because, I'm working professional, like it's a burden to cook dinner. And so I would, DoorDash dinner and what have you. But I made an effort to stop doing that and to cook my own dinner and to, only eat whole food. So eat yogurt in the morning, eat, real bread for lunch. So like not sliced bread, but, bread that goes bad. If your food, and you correct me, you're the expert, Ren, but if your food goes bad, in like a few days, that means it's good food. That, like, good food is food that actually spoils. If your food never spoils, well, that's probably not so good for you. So I made an effort to only eat food that, that is not processed, food that will actually spoil. Cook real meat for dinner, cook real vegetables for dinner. And within 4 or 5 months, I suddenly could fit into the suits I couldn't fit into for 3 or 4 years. And, this was not changing my workout regimen at all. Frankly, I mean, I still should. I'm doing the same workout for, the past 4 or 5 years. It's not, I could use some work there, but just changing the diet alone, just, shed the pounds. So there's so much we're leaving on the table just by, failure to say no to DoorDash, say no to, ordering in, to, processed foods, to, like, yeah, you pick up that, bag of sliced bread, and you can keep it in your pantry for the next 4 months. Well, there's a reason why you can keep it in your pantry for 4 months, because it has all sorts of stuff in it that is not really very good for you. So yeah, it's a bit of a short term um, annoyance to kind of be like, well, I'm going to cook food. I'm going to order, buy stuff that goes bad, so I have to eat it right away. But in the long term, you are healthier and you look better. And what is a better outcome than that, I would say.
Well, I think that people need to think of the extra cost and the extra effort that's involved in being healthy and maintaining your health as an investment in the future. That's
Absolutely.
that's the way to think about it. When you start thinking about it like that, then it becomes obvious that you should be doing it. You know, I mean, people. The sad thing is that people never think that anything bad will happen to them. I'm not going to be the person who has a stroke. I'm not going to be the person who has a heart attack. I'm not going to be the person who gets type 2 diabetes and has a leg rot off.
Yeah.
But it
Cancer.
does. It happens to a lot. Yeah, cancer. It happens to a lot of people, and it happens to them because, I mean, for some people, then it obviously is poverty, and they don't have access to healthy food, and it's difficult. Life is difficult, but for a lot of people, it is. A lot of people, most people can afford, or almost everybody can afford to eat better, and they can afford to live their life in a better way by doing some exercise and not just watching the television, playing with their phones, etc. So if you think of it as an investment, that's a much better way to motivate yourself. Do you want to live a long and fulfilling life? Do you want to still in 20 years time to be able to do the things you enjoy now? And if the answer is yes, then I would say, well, think about what you're eating, think about what you're putting into your body, and think about your levels of activity.
Absolutely.
But the thing is, of course, that the entire culture is predicated on convenience now and
Yeah.
lack of effort, and so it's you are very much pushing against the grain. I mean, although of course, you could say, well, gym culture is a much bigger thing than it ever was, and there's Whole Foods and things like that. Then it's still nevertheless the case that as a whole, our society or our societies are the unhealthiest they have ever been, and it's only getting worse.
Absolutely. And the kind of the idea that gym culture will mitigate eating poorly, it's just, it's so, I mean, I'm certainly no scientist, but it just strikes me as wishful thinking, very illogical. To do a callback to your pod with newfounding, you mentioned something to the effect of how you have bodybuilders who are on anabolics, and say what you will about that. There's various schools of thought, but who will not eat egg yolk, and it's kind of like, you know if they, it illustrates a fundamental misapprehension of nutrition and overall health. Correct me
Yeah.
if I'm wrong.
No, no,
Right.
no, no. I think you're totally right. I think that yeah, I mean, gym culture certainly does have its absurdities, and certainly one of the biggest absurdities of the last however many decades has been the fact that you have these enormous bodybuilders who are happy to inject gallons of anabolic steroids into their veins and enlarge their hearts and poison their livers and poison their brains as well. Trenbolone is neurotoxic, and some SARMs are neurotoxic as well. I think YK11 is neurotoxic. I wrote about this. So, they really are doing harm to their bodies, but they won't consume egg yolks because they contain cholesterol. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And what's even more insane about it is that cholesterol is incredibly good for you. And
Yeah.
And so
my just to say an aside, my grandmother lived until her mid 80s with a cholesterol in the 300s. So anecdotal, of course, but regardless.
it's not. Well, I mean, yes, that particular instance is anecdotal, but there are numerous studies now, the Hawaii Heart Health Study, the Minnesota Coronary Experiment, that show that actually, if you reduce people's cholesterol, they die more. So, I think in the Minnesota Coronary Experiment, they showed that for every 30-point decrease in total cholesterol a person experiences, they have a 22% higher chance of all-cause mortality. So that's death from anything, basically.
Okay,
I mean,
I'm feeling very safe in my 240 right now. So
yeah, I mean, I think that cholesterol, the demonization of cholesterol, was one of the biggest public health mistakes, I think, probably ever. Really, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've talked about the history of this. I've written about the history of this. What's interesting is that at the time in the 1950s, when the lipid heart hypothesis was being proposed by this chap called Ansel Keys, who was the real sort of originator of the theory, then loads of doctors thought that it was absolute bullshit. They really did. I mean, he faced a lot of pushback at academic conferences and things like that. But because among other things, and he had the backing of the American Heart Association, which had money from Procter and Gamble, which was an early manufacturer of margarine.
Sure.
Then the commercial interests won out over good science, and the American people and people of all developed nations have been paying the price for the last 70 years. We were promised renewed health if we abandoned animal fats and animal products, and it just hasn't materialized at all. In fact, the opposite has happened. And so, I mean, if you want to read about this, then there's a good book called The Great Cholesterol Con by Dr. Malcolm Kendrick. That's a good place to start.
Okay, yeah. I will look that up.
Catherine Shanahan talks about it as well in Deep Nutrition. So, yeah, I mean, and in fact, actually, the interesting thing is that the orthodoxy of the last 70 years on cholesterol has actually been overturned now. So a great many countries that once had cholesterol guidelines have totally abandoned them, and that includes the US. So in 2015, the US government quietly dropped its recommendations about cholesterol consumption, because actually now the prevailing science suggests that very clearly that consumption of dietary cholesterol, so that's cholesterol in your food, does not end up in your blood. It's not like the more cholesterol you eat, the more you have in your blood. That isn't how it works at all. And so but the thing is that people haven't been told this. So your doctor, your physician, probably doesn't know that. And so if you go to him and you've had a blood test and it comes back with high cholesterol, then he will say, "Oh, maybe you should start eating vegetable oil instead of butter. Maybe you should spread margarine on your toast rather than butter." So it's what I'm trying to do is to spread awareness of that fact among other things. But it's yes, the lipid heart hypothesis has been a public health disaster.
Yeah, and I mean, even if it is in your blood, like I think my cholesterol, as I said, is like 240 or something, and I've had like ultrasounds of my carotid, it's totally clean. I, have a resting heartbeat in the 50s. So, by all counts, like I'm doing well with quote unquote high cholesterol. Knock on wood, don't want to jinx myself. But yeah, I mean, I think, certainly like switching to eating whole foods and whole vegetables, and I cook with duck fat now. I lost weight and I feel healthier. So something to be said for that.
Yeah, many such cases, many such cases. Yeah, I would. If there's one book about diet I would recommend people read, it would be Weston Price, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. I mean, he
Okay.
established. Yeah, so this was a classic book that he wrote. He wrote. I think he published it in 1939. He was a dent. I've talked about him a lot. I talk about him in the Eggs Benedict option. So he was a dentist, and he was a dentist in the Midwest in Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, and he was he I think he started practicing in about 1890, and this was around about the time when Americans were moving from diets that were made up of locally produced whole foods to new industrial foodstuffs that were produced in factories,
I
things made
see.
of refined wheats and other refined products. So they were moving away basically from their ancestral diets based in animal products and whole foods. And Weston Price, as a dentist, noticed that more and more of his patients were coming to see him with dreadful, dreadful problems with their teeth and
I
mouths
see.
and faces. So he noticed that there was an epidemic of cavities, that people had malformed dental arches. So that's the top of the mouth. It wasn't forming properly. It was too narrow. He saw that people had narrow cheeks, narrow nasal passages. Um, uh, and that they were suffering from behavioral problems as a result, especially children. So he hypothesized that this was probably due to what people were eating. And eventually, after a couple of decades, he and his wife decided that they would try to put this theory to the test by looking at traditional societies around the world that were eating their traditional foods and seeing if they suffered from the same problems. So he went across the length and breadth of the planet. He went from the Arctic Canada to Africa,
Hmm.
to the Swiss Alps, to the Scottish Outer Hebrides and the Scottish Highlands, to Australia, to the Pacific Islands, and he found traditional societies that were eating their traditional diets. And what he discovered was that they didn't suffer from any of these problems. And so his great thesis his great discovery is that industrial diets cause physical degeneration because
That
they
makes
are
sense.
among other things, made up of foodstuffs that we've never eaten before, products like refined flours and refined sugars that are stripped of all of their goodness, and that actually, if what you want is perfect physical health, what you need to consume is the kind of foodstuffs that these tribal groups and traditional societies consume. So that's organ meats, things like liver and other offal, fatty cuts of meat. Fatty cuts of meat in particular, we favor lean cuts of meat, but it's fatty cuts of meat really that have things like collagen in them,
Excellent.
and also fat, which contains all sorts of enzymes and minerals, etc., and vitamins, nutrients, and that kind of stuff. Blood products, milk products. What else? Fats like butter and lard, seafood, as well as the other one. So basically, a healthy diet needs to be built around what he calls nutrient dense animal products, basically. And so that. I mean, that is totally the opposite of the prevailing nutritional wisdom now. The prevailing nutritional wisdom
Very
for the
much
last
so.
70 years, which has been that actually we need to cut those products out of our diet. We need to, and now we're being told, of course, that we need to adopt a plant-based diet, that we need to get rid of milk and eggs and butter and meat. Totally. And I mean, this is what my book, The Eggs Benedict Option, is about. It's about the fact that actually the plan for a global plant-based diet will make us all tremendously ill, among other
Oh,
things, and it will make us,
clearly, yeah,
and it will make us much easier to control as well. So,
absolutely.
so yes, read Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. It's a very, very interesting book. It's a very, very striking book, and the history of the 20th century would have been very, very different if Weston Price's insights had become mainstream and been accepted by medical science and physicians. I can assure you.
So, Man's World Online, you have launched a website for Man's World, which, previously had been available via PDF, via download from, various sources. But now the whole of, I believe, or if not the whole, most of the whole of most of the issues of Man's World are being posted to Man's World Online. And this is amazing. This is great. I mean, I personally have a tie to this because the excellent review of Nutcracker by Kevin Kautzman was in the PDF, but I wanted to share and link it. I was not entirely able to kind of like get it out as far as I wanted to go, just because of the lack of a website. But now Man's World Online is online, and that is a big plus. It's much easier to share the articles, and this is kind of simultaneous with the regular publication of Man's World Digest, which is a very sexy compilation of kind of the best of the last several, or perhaps even like a single issue of Man's World.
It's the digest is for each individual issue, yeah. So
Okay, great,
each
yeah.
issue has its own digest. It's the annual at the end of the year that has a that is a retrospective of the entire year and also contains new stuff as well.
Yeah. I mean, so right here, I have next to me the various Man's Worlds, the
Uh-huh.
various digests, and this was an excellent cover on I think the first Man's World Digest
Yeah, the
by
Beowulf.
Vincent, and and that was a great issue. But I can see in the most recent one, now we have color. We have color
Yeah,
images. This is like really something that is fun to flip through, fun to read, and it is available for pretty low cost on Amazon, who is certainly not an ally and certainly not a friend, but hey, if our interests coincide for some period of time, that's fine by me. And I
yeah,
am
precisely.
yeah, I'm happy to get my content. And in fact, I'm like obviously constantly promoting Nutcracker, and I send
Hmm.
people to Amazon because it's the fastest and easiest way to get a copy. And like, yes, we're published by Terror House. I love Matt Forney, the publisher of Terror House, but I send people to Amazon just because, well, I mean, that's people already have their account set up. You don't have to put in your credit card information. Everyone has an Amazon account. You click buy, and you buy it.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is available. Man's World is available. I mean, the annual is from Antelope Hill. They do an
Hmm.
excellent job, but the digest is available. At the very least, it's available on Amazon and easy to buy. You just click buy. and you have something that, for instance, my girlfriend was like, as I'm prepping for this episode, she's like, "Oh, what are those like colorful, like, things you have there?" I'm just like, "This is man's world, baby. This is this is man's world." And it's, yeah, it looks good.
Well, so a lot has happened recently with Man's World. So we've got the new website, mansworldmag.online, and what we've I mean, my designer is an absolute genius, and
Mm,
he's created an amazing website that's unlike anybody else's website.
mm.
Has all sorts of interactive elements, and just the attention to detail is amazing. And he did the last cover for the magazine as well, the
Yeah,
Zelensky Giga Chad cover, which is a piss take of Bono's cover for the Atlantic. So it was
yeah.
my idea. It was my idea to do that, but he really he executed it and he really delivered the goods. But yeah, we've got this amazing website. You can download individual issues of the magazine, or you can read individual articles actually on the site as well. So now you can share them easily rather than having to share the whole magazine. You can just share individual articles, and that's really helped the website take off. So I mean, we've had 350,000 hits a week on the
My
website
God, that
some
is
weeks.
amazing. That
Yeah,
is,
yeah, it's been crazy. Huge,
yeah.
huge. I actually, on the day that I released the latest issue of Man's World on the website, the traffic got so crazy I had to contact the service provider and upgrade the hosting package because it was just the website was just absolutely, it was just crawling because so many people were on there downloading the magazine and looking at the stuff. So the website really is now the hub of Man's World. We've got a Twitter account as well. I think it's Man's World Mag _ is the handle, which does all the promotion now for the magazine as well. Um, the website has a store too, so we're selling t-shirts, stringers, hoodies, long sleeve tees, which
They
is
look
really
great.
cool.
Buy
Yeah,
them.
yeah, yep. You can buy, and so I think what we're doing is with each issue, then we're doing a special tie-in T-shirt that has the magazine cover on it. So you can get the Zelensky special um, T-shirt or hoodie with the Zelensky Giga Chad. And then there are other designs as well. We're currently in the process of designing the most amazing. It's going to be so funny. The most amazing Trump 2024 T-shirt. Um,
I
which
think I've seen a preview of that.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
there
think you
there
have.
could be riggers here.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, that would be great.
something
Yeah,
like that. Yeah, yeah. Riggers could be here. So yeah, combining Trump and the sleaze core king refueling his car for Trump
I love
2024.
it.
So yeah, that's going to be on there as well. The t-shirts are proving really, really popular. It's a great way. I mean, nobody has to buy a t-shirt. Nobody has to buy the digest either. But if you want to support the work that I do and that everybody else involved with the magazine does, then that's one way to do it. And it absolutely does help. Absolutely does help. And also the thing is, I mean, the t-shirts are really, really unique. They're really well designed. They look great. They're made of 100% cotton. We've got a great company printing them for us on demand. So they're, again, like with the Kindred Harvest, these are high quality products. If you want high quality products, then you've come to the right place. We're not selling anybody old rope here. So yeah, so I mean, Man's World is really going from strength to strength. We're expanding. We've got big things in the pipeline for the near future too. It's looking like we may very well have a magazine on the shelves soon enough, or
Amazing.
sooner than you think. We'll probably be doing that quarterly, like as the magazine runs now. So it wouldn't be a monthly thing because that would be too much work, and it would be insane to do that. You need a huge outfit to do that, and really it is still largely a one-man show with the magazine, so it's enough work for me to make a quarterly magazine as I can. But yeah, we're gonna get it out onto store shelves sooner than you think, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Yeah, I mean, Man's World has taken off in ways that I never thought would ever happen. You know, it was just it was just a funny little project that I had an idea for, but actually it's really resonated with a lot of people, I think, and
Absolutely.
it's demonstrated, I think, a real need for interesting physical products. You know, I mean, it's one thing for everybody to have a Substack and release their essays on their Substack pages and occasionally maybe write for some, you know, some outlet, some other outlet as well. But actually having all of these, having a complete package of essays and interviews and fiction and funny memes and all that sort of stuff all up together in one product is it's something that's much greater than the sum of its parts. You know, it's yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely something more. And I think that it really has really shown the way, and I'm really glad to see that other people now have started their own magazines and things, that they're you know, trying to bring together talent and showcase it, because that's what we've got to do. That is what we have to do. We have to work together in furtherance of a common goal, which is to win the culture war and to win the war in general, not just the culture war, but the war. And so whatever Man's World has done in furtherance of that aim, then I'm very proud of.
As you should be. You owe it to yourself to frankly buy one of these digest issues, and you know, to the extent that you follow Ren and you read Man's World, it is, you know, not only is it fun, not only is it nice to have an issue of the digest on your coffee table, it is a conversation starter because it, you know, it looks, the covers are beautiful, the layout is, you know, similarly beautiful, and it, you know, it looks very professional, and it exposes, you know, if you have guests over and they're like, what is this? Well, you can tell them. And you know, because of, you know, the way normies are, if they see something that looks nice, they'll assume, well, okay, there must be something to this. So you
Yeah.
owe it to yourself to buy these, put them out on your coffee table or whatever, and you know, kind of fly the flag. And you'll be surprised by how normies respond to stuff that looks good. Because when stuff looks good, they think, well, okay, this is something that I am allowed to digest. This is something I'm allowed to process and think about because it's, you know, it's officially, it looks good, so it must have the imprimatur of, you know, someone who says I can read this. And, you know, in truth, it only has the imprimatur of Ren. And not that Ren is, you know, not someone who should be respected. I very much think he should be. The, you know, the normies, I don't think we as a, you know, a group have yet to cultivate the position where we have institutional respect from normies. But regardless, we can embody the you know, the aesthetic principles that they, you know, like, and that we like. It looks great. And you know, that, you know, if you want to be taken seriously, you have to do stuff like produce Man's World Digest. And you know, kudos to you for pulling it off. This looks great.
Thank you. Well, so the digest, just to reiterate, is a paperback. It's available from Amazon. It's not expensive, and it contains a selection, usually sort of 7 to 10 essays from the digital Man's World, and some adverts and memes and stuff as well. So it's a way to get your hands on a physical copy of the magazine. It's not the full magazine; it's a curated selection. But it's full color now. It used to be black and white because of the printing costs, but now there are new printing options on Amazon, so I can print in full color inside as well without it being prohibitively expensive either to print it or for you to buy it. So that's the good thing. So we can make a bit of profit on it, and also it can still remain cheap. But
Excellent.
to address what you were saying about aesthetics, I mean, aesthetics really, if we're talking about the right today, then aesthetics is what we have to offer above
Correct.
above more than any other faction, if you will, on the right. Nobody else. The aesthetics clearly are important in a way that actually the traditional right just doesn't understand, and has been very slow to understand. And that's part of the reason why Bronze Age mindset continues to be such a runaway success, is because it embodies aesthetic principles that are attractive to people, and that people
Absolutely.
that actually draw people to the movement rather than repelling them away from it. Rather than a stuffed shirt man in a badly fitting tweed suit, with
Yeah.
sweat patches under his arms and a great big fat pink face. Then Bronze Age mindset is a youthful vision of vitality and exuberance and fun and humor, and all of those things, I
Very
think,
much so.
are things that I've tried to capture too in Man's World, with the adverts and the general tone of the magazine, the covers. And I still think in that regard, actually, that Man's World is unique. I don't think that there's any other published product that comes close to Man's World in that regard. The aesthetic, with the sort of aesthetic vision, it is a total aesthetic vision, one that obviously has its obvious influences in things like Playboy, but is also uniquely its own. So I often say it's Playboy updated for the massively online internet autist generation, and that is definitely true to an extent, and it's what makes Man's World different. But the thing about the annual in particular, I think, and I said this on one of the previous episodes of this show that I appeared on, is that the way that I think about the annual is as a kind of it's like a product from the future. So
Mm.
the annual only comes out once a year. It's a glossy hardback. It's like the Playboy annual, which used to be released every year. I've actually got a copy of a Playboy annual from 1955. It's a really, really
Oh,
lovely,
wow.
really lovely. It's the second Playboy annual, so not the first. But it's a lovely document, a lovely time capsule of what Playboy was like in the 1950s. And but this Man's World, this glossy hardback, high production value document, that you could put on a coffee table, and that would, people would look at and be really enticed by and excited to read. And you could share, you could give it to your dad, you could give it to your uncle, you could give it to whoever you wanted, and it would generate conversation and excitement. Then this really is a document that sort of signals what it might actually be like in the future if we ended up in possession of the culture, if actually we were the tastemakers and we were the people in control. Then actually, we would have products like this. There'd be loads of products like it. You'd have magazines and books and films and music and every kind of cultural production you can think of. So I want the Man's World manual annual is obviously more expensive because it's hardback, but I want it to be an exquisite item, like the
Absolutely.
as good a publication as it could be in terms of its production values and also its content. And it's nice that there are other people also doing that sort of thing on our side as well. So I think particularly of the Passage Prize, the people at the Passage Press, what they do with their Passage Prize anthologies, which are beautiful artifacts. And that's the kind of thing that we need to be doing more of. We need to be ambitious. We need to be looking to the stars and aiming high. And so there's another Man's World annual coming out at the end of the year, and each
Excellent.
one is better than the last. And this one has some of the best articles from the year. It's got new articles. I've written a new long article. other new articles as well, new memes. It's got a board game called Cucked Brunch, which involves our favorite, the leader of the Seminole Order, Brian Goldberg, um, who is not based on anybody in real life, and the Seminole Order isn't based on anything in real life either. Um, so yeah, it's a unique document, and nobody else is making anything like it at the moment, and so it's a real pleasure. I don't ever. It's a lot of work doing all of this Manswell stuff, the world stuff,
Of
but I
course,
never,
yeah.
I never, I never, I never begrudge it at all. It is a pleasure and a privilege, and I mean, if people can get involved as much or as little as they want to. I mean, I always welcome help, and I've been very lucky that the contributors generally have been extremely helpful and gracious. I've had a few people who've been less than gracious. I won't mention it. I won't mention any names, but there was a couple of pretty shocking interactions I've had. But otherwise, generally, people have been really great, really excited, and really happy to contribute their time. And I mean, look, I don't pay people for writing for Manswell, but that's true of everybody who's written in Manswell. So
Absolutely.
I've had New York Times best-selling authors write for Manswell. We've interviewed Noor Bin Laden, who does the interview. She's interviewed really big people. Bronze Age Pervert writes for free. Everybody writes for free, so it's not
Yeah.
like nobody's getting ripped off by not being paid. I mean, at some point, I would like to pay people, and hopefully we're getting closer to that day when I actually can pay people a wage or a dividend that is commensurate for their effort. But I think what you have to think that Mansworld is a showcase, and that's what I intend it to be, as a showcase. So it's somewhere where actually you can showcase your work if you want to, in a way that is totally different from just writing a Substack essay. It's like
Absolutely.
here is your writing about whatever in a publication. And the thing is, look, like, none of us are likely to get in a mainstream magazine anytime soon, simply by nature of who we are and what we
True.
represent. Maybe in a hit piece. So I've had plenty of hit pieces written about me, in Mother Jones and GQ and Vanity Fair and all this kind of stuff. But I've never actually been given space in any of those publications to write, and probably never would be. So what we're doing with Manswell really is we're engaging in it's not a simulation. Simulation would be the wrong word, but what we're doing is, I'm showing people what it would actually be like, what it would be like for their work to be in a real magazine. And it is a real magazine. It's not a
Absolutely.
simulation. But it's an interesting countercultural exercise, among other things. And I think if you want to see your work in a magazine laid out properly with nice pictures, and you want to get some experience of writing as well, because I mean, people ask me a lot of the time, how do you get better at writing? And the simple answer is you just keep writing. And why not? If you think you want to be a writer and you think you've got an article in you about something, why not try and write a piece for Mansworld? Because it will be, at the very least, it will be an interesting exercise, and you will learn something, and you will develop your skills. And certainly, I've had people who've written for the magazine, who started writing for the magazine in the beginning, and they've written multiple times, and it's so clear that they're getting so much better, and that's
Yeah.
wonderful. That's wonderful to see as well. So I think Mansworld works, and similar publications work on a variety of different levels. And I think because we don't necessarily have the institutional support that idiots on the left have, then we need to help one another as much as we can. And that is what I'm trying to do. I am trying to help people on our side to develop their talents and showcase them.
Absolutely. I mean, with Man's World, you're doing a clear, service, frankly, to our side, to showcase voices, to, give people the platform to speak. and that is great. One thing that I think is to some extent, not exactly lost, but overlooked in all of this is that you yourself are a very good writer. I've, in preparing for this episode, but also previously, I've been reading your writing, and I mean, you have a strong command of the language, obviously. And in addition, just like really kind of like funny, well structured essays with, moments that, it is hard. I'm, as my listeners know, the author of Nutcracker, and I, you know, my readers find my writing funny. I do myself, and they laugh. That I think is actually that is hard. It is hard to make people laugh. It is hard to make people like have an actual emotional response to writing that is not rooted in the content, the thing you're talking about, but more is rooted in the style or the substance. And so, for instance, in your the Longhouse Delusion essay, which you published somewhat recently,
It was
um,
issue 10.
issue 10. There we go.
Yeah.
There's a kind of you on relatively like briefly into this essay, you inhabit the mind of a Peterson like figure, and you say something like, find another corner of the internet to sully, you evil coward. And for me, that was just like hilarious. I just like, I'm reading this. I just like marked that, I laughed out loud, and just like so kind of like in touch with, you know, the reader, the climate on our side, the humor. You are a very good writer. And amidst all that you do, I feel like this is perhaps, unfortunately, not discussed enough. But yeah, just kudos. Do you have any writing tips for readers?
Well, thank you. That was a very kind thing to say. I mean, I do, I love writing. I mean, writing was definitely, writing for me came before designing, before doing all of this design stuff with the magazine. I mean, I didn't have any experience with design when I started the magazine. I
Mm.
might, in retrospect, it's obvious that I've got at least an eye for design. But I didn't have any formal training or anything like that. So I came to design as a total neophyte. But yes, I do think that to some extent, then maybe it slightly overshadows what I do, which is to write. Although I write very regularly now for the American Mind. I probably publish an article with them every fortnight. I write for other people. I've just started writing for Human Events for Jack Posobiec's outlet. So yeah, I mean, writing is still very much. I still see myself as a writer fundamentally,
Yeah.
and I've got another book planned reasonably soon. It's a short book. What would I say about writing? I think. Well, I'd say what I said just a minute ago. You need to write. If you're going to be a writer, then you need to write. And I've encountered in various stages in my life, but particularly at university, people who will say things like, "I'm a writer, I'm a poet," and then you ask them, "Oh, what have you written? Tell me about your poetry," and they've not written anything. And I mean, they're not poets and they're not writers because they haven't written a poem and they haven't written an essay or a book or anything else, a story or anything like that. So you have to take the plunge at some point, and it's an unfortunate reality, I think, for all writers and for all artists and creators in general, that you will look back in a few years' time, or maybe even a year or even 6 months, at what you what you were writing or producing today, and you will probably, part of you will feel embarrassed. Certainly if you are somebody who is a perfectionist, even in a small way, or if you're someone who is a real perfectionist, then you're going to look back at your stuff and think, oh God, I wish I hadn't said that. I wish I hadn't phrased that the way I phrased it. I wish I'd said something different. But that's just natural, and that shouldn't stop you. That sense of imperfection, awareness of imperfection, shouldn't stop you from writing. So what you need to do is you need to take the plunge and understand that it is a learning process. I also think that the other thing that you need to do is you need to read good writing. You need to immerse yourself in good writing. And this is one of the problems, I think, especially for people in academia, for people who come from academic backgrounds, from people who have got doctoral qualifications or graduate qualifications. Then they have experience of a very particular form of writing that is actually not really fit for general purpose. And so, I mean, when I in my capacity as editor of Man's World, then sometimes I see essays that are, you can see that there's something good there, but the way it's expressed is, it reads like an MPhil essay, like a graduate essay, and that's not what people want to read in a magazine. There's no reason why philosophical ideas or complicated ideas necessarily need to be expressed in that awful academic prose. So I think that, yes, certainly if you're coming from that kind of background, then you need to read other stuff. Like, you're not going to be a good writer if all you read is academic essays and articles and books and all that sort of stuff, and that's your only experience of writing. So yes, practice as much as you can, write, submit work. Don't get too hung up on any knockbacks, because everybody experiences knockbacks in the literary world. Although actually I must say that one of the things also that I like about our scene is that generally people aren't as, for want of a better word, aren't as cuntish as they are in the real literary world. I mean, people, a lot of the majority of literary gatekeepers who work for journals and publishers and all that kind of stuff are failed writers themselves, and they are very, very bitter and very, 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 very protective. They enjoy being able to exercise arbitrary power and to crush people's dreams. And generally there are a few people like that on our side at the moment. I won't mention any names, but generally people are very friendly, and I, even when I reject stuff, and I don't really do it that often, but it's never really an outright rejection, and I always try to say to people, look, okay, this isn't what I want, but it could be more what I want if you did this, that, and something else. So I try to be constructive, and that is just something that you have to deal with. And if people are nice to you and do try to be constructive, then take it in the right spirit, because it's much better than having somebody not even respond when you send them an email and send them an article, because that's what a lot of people do in the literary world. They don't even have the good courtesy to respond.
Absolutely. What people, I think, fail to realize, or maybe do not fail to realize, but do not appropriately appreciate, is the literary acumen that you have, and that frankly is something that you are really offering and bringing to this sphere and helping to elevate us. And it is, as you say, certainly our voices will not be appreciated or respected in the mainstream, but beyond that, even in our little ecosystem, I mean, you are you're a booster. You you want to help people. You want to help people get better health, but beyond that, become better writers, become better versions of themselves. So I would encourage our listeners, and sorry if I inundate you, Ren, but I would encourage them to submit to Man's World and
Yeah, please.
you cannot find a more generous champion of your own writing and your own ability to write than Ren. And yeah, please submit, please engage with him. Um, you know, he is an individual who is clearly intelligent and talented enough to succeed in the quote unquote mainstream literary environment and the mainstream world in general. But he is, here for you. So get involved. That's my admonition.
Thank you, Dan. No, that's very, very, very welcome. Thank you. Um, so if you do want to submit, if you do want to get in contact with me, then just send an email to mansworldmagazine@protonmail.com. I welcome unsolicited submissions at all times on anything. I mean, the broad guidance for the magazine is just that it be interesting. Just write something that's just write something interesting. It can be about anything. I mean, I've had some all sorts of unexpected stuff in there, stuff that I didn't think I would publish, but that actually turned out to be really, really interesting and unusual. And so if you've got something to say, and there are all sorts of different sections within the magazine. We've got an opinion section, the meditation section, that's sort of 1,200 to 1,500 word opinion pieces. And then there are longer essays. We have fitness essays, recipes, all sorts of stuff, short essays, less than 1,000 words, fiction. So really just, whatever takes your fancy, as long as you can make it interesting and as long as it's not something you'd see in the pages of Jacobin, then I'm certainly willing to consider it. I read all submissions. Everything that I get sent, I read, and I always respond. So, just pluck up the courage if you're wavering a little bit, and get in touch, because the magazine wouldn't happen without all of these contributions mainly from Anons, and it could be the start of something really great for the magazine and for you. So yeah, get involved.
So yeah, I think a good maybe place to close this on is the hit pieces that have recently come out and how they have been, in my opinion, like pretty ineffective.
Yeah, I think they've been really ineffective. I think part of the problem that they have is that whenever they describe what we're talking about and quote us, so I'm including Bronze Age Pervert as well as myself and others.
Yeah.
They just make us sound cool.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually think it would be a better strategy for them to avoid talking about us, to ignore us, rather than to, because like they quote stuff from Bronze Age Mindset that's supposed to be reprehensible, and it's just so funny. It's just hilarious, and they quoted something from my appearance on a podcast where I talked about how leftists are really ugly, and often, and it's like, it's just a demonstrable fact. Like, I'm not.
Yeah.
They're trying to make out that it's something deeply sinister that I've said that, but it's like, all you have to do is just open your eyes, just look around, look at, it's not. So yeah, I think that these hit pieces are ill-advised because they're ineffectual, and they just make the people who write them look very, very silly. But it's interesting how many of them are coming now. I mean, it's like at least one a week, maybe more sometimes, and they all seem to be connected. They're all parroting the same kind of phrases, and it's the same people as well. It's people around Sohrab Ahmari, for instance, at Compact. Sure. He called me a member of the Unabomber right, which is, I mean, what even is that? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just silly, and it's a label that doesn't even bear a moment's scrutiny. The fact that certain aspects of the Eggs Benedict option may hark to, Ted Kaczynski's ideas about the progress of industrialization and the birth of agriculture or whatever, I mean, is beside the point. That's where the similarities begin and end. It's not like, at no point have I ever said I'm a disciple of the Unabomber. And then you have Gnostic bodybuilders, and it's just, I mean, it's just funny. It's funny, and I mean, some people when they have hit pieces written about them, then it makes them very angry because things are said that are untrue and unpleasant, and that are genuine smears. But when I see these pieces, I just laugh. I mean, there was one that was written about me by Mother Jones, and it was called Blood, Soil, and Grass-Fed Beef. And I turned that slogan into a T-shirt because I thought that's actually a really cool slogan.
Yeah, why not? Really?
But the author of the piece said about my latest book, The Eggs Benedict Option, that it read as if Tucker Carlson had written The Omnivore's Dilemma. And I'm like, thank you. That's not an insult. You haven't insulted me by saying that my book reads like Tucker Carlson wrote The Omnivore's Dilemma. The Omnivore's Dilemma is a great book about nutrition by Michael Pollan. Just if you didn't know, it's a very, very good book. Really a classic book, widely
I've read How to Change Your Mind by Pollan. And I mean, like, he, regardless, I don't know much about his politics, but he is a good journalist, and he does seem to like genuinely, investigate his issues.
I think the Omnivore's Dilemma is a very radical book, and I mean, I think he's left liberal. Obviously, I think.
I mean,
might be sort of libertarian, might be on the kind of libertarian end of the left, but I mean, he's certainly not like a Marxist or anything like that, but I'm sure he's probably a liberal. But The Omnivore's Dilemma, I think, is a very, very radical book, and he leaves a lot of he doesn't say a lot of the conclusions he's reached about the way that food is produced and the way that people eat out loud, but they're there, and you can hear them, and you can say them yourself with confidence when you read the book. So it's a great book, and that certainly wasn't it conjured up a very funny image for me of Tucker Carlson writing a book about nutrition, and I just thought, that's cool. You thought you intended that as a really withering put down. You thought that would make me look stupid, but it actually just made me laugh. And that's generally how I feel about these hit pieces. Although I think that some of the hit pieces about Bronze Age Pervert are a bit sinister, and I definitely think that they are trying to make him. That they're trying to make him seem like a danger, which I absolutely don't think he is. And and I think that there's very definitely, I mean, I said that there was some appearance of coordination, and I think with the Bronze Age Pervert hit pieces in particular, I think there is. I think there's a very definite whether a memo has gone round, I don't know, but it definitely feels like they're deliberately trying to get as many outlets to write bad things about him so they can build up a sort of case that he is kind of universally recognized as a sort of dangerous figure, when in fact he's just not,
absolutely. And I mean, oh, go on. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think that they are just worried about the fact that he is proving so popular, and that his writings resonate, especially with young people, with young men, in a way that their writings don't. I mean, I think that Donna Zuckerberg, Mark Zuckerberg's sister, she wrote an awful book about the classics,
Yeah.
an awful politically correct book about reinterpreting the classics through the lens of white supremacy and all this kind of bullshit.
Yes.
And Bronze Age Pervert's book absolutely blew hers out of the water and was when it was released and has been ever since far of far greater popularity on Amazon, far higher up the rankings in ancient history and classics than her books. And I think it actually inspired her to fund her own sort of NGO type group to promote this sort of woke reading of the classics and actually to sort of militantly levy against Bronze Age Pervert. I mean, it's hilarious. It's hilarious, really. It's a self-published on Amazon that regularly outsells all of these ridiculous
Absolutely.
astroturfed writers from the establishment, and it drives them mad because they think that their credentials, they think that their PhDs and their postdoctoral positions make them authorities that everybody should respect and listen to and shouldn't question. But actually, far from it. We think that these people are ridiculous and should just be laughed at, really.
I think we have a very interesting situation on the counterculture today, whereby the counterculture actually has a lot of intellectual and philosophical and moral justification for what they're saying. So the counterculture is not just like kind of like critiquing the mainstream culture and being like, well, on some respects, you're not, entirely correct. The counterculture today is like fundamentally correct, in a way that, is like kind of unique for US history, at least. I'm not going to speak to world history, but our like current kind of, for want of a better word, reactionary counterculture is correct in ways that are just like, fundamentally kind of upend the mainstream understanding of the culture. So it's a very weird place to be, but certainly at the very least, what this means is people who are interested in the creative arts, what have you, they are not drawn to the mainstream culture anymore. So I was at a party past couple of nights ago, and people were talking to me about how, the all of the vitality is on the right, and they are right, just because, not only because the right is the only place that will champion free speech. Now, whether that makes sense in the long run, I'm not going to say. I'm not sure that, a kind of virtuous culture is compatible with unlimited free speech. But at the very least, at the moment, the right is the free speech element of the popular culture. And in addition to that, they're just speaking truths that are, so obvious and fundamental. It's like we exist in a time in history where there is a sort of supercharged counterculture. And that's a place that I'm happy to be in. And I'm frankly lucky to be in. Because if this were not the case, if the culture were different, and the mainstream were not the current kind of life denying mainstream that we have today, yeah, I mean, I would have to fight it out with like other very good writers who would be writing like satires who are as good or better than Nutcracker, but I don't.
Such a work doesn't exist.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. I mean, like, by virtue of the fact that like most everyone who is bought into the culture cannot satire the culture, and the culture is just so ripe for satire because it's so life denying. It's so, what have you. All the vitality is on the right. All of the beyond even the creative vitality, which is important, all of the a lot of the health related biological truths are on the right. I mean, like, it's insane to think that there are people who are watching MSNBC or whatever, CNN, and thinking, I know what's going on. I have a good sense of the world, but nothing could be farther from the truth. They do not have control over their own bodies. They do not have control over their own minds. They do not have control over their own emotional impulses. And, you know, we have a unique opportunity today, which is to, you know, instruct the mainstream, instruct our culture from a position of authority from the counterculture. And I think, a lot of like what has been said by people such as Yarvin, others, is very relevant here, very correct in that, people think there's, how will we ever come back to power? How will we ever set the world to rights? Well, just, simply, um, keep doing what you're doing. Keep, writing for man's world. Keep, keeping in good health. And that involves, the strategies that Ren has just outlined for us. That involves the kind of the health conscious, concepts that are embodied in, Kindred Harvest and others. We have, so much power that, frankly, those who would black pill just, are either kind of like, too emo, too kind of emotional, or just, fail to recognize the power that we have. And, Ren is not one of those guys. I mean, he is almost single-handedly revitalizing the publishing industry, which is amazing, but also, revitalizing the way we think about health, which is, frankly, an even greater accomplishment. And I, at the very beginning of this pod, I said something to the effect of, I would pay Ren to kind of like tell me what I'm doing wrong on a health, basis in my everyday life. And now there's a company for that. So look into Kindred Harvest. Look into, Man's World online. It's all out there for you. Buy the digest. And Ren, do you have any, final plugs, final thoughts you want to convey?
No, I think that was a very powerful message you just gave the audience, and I would agree with it 100%. Especially the bits about buying the digest and the annual,
Absolutely.
and checking out Kindred Harvest. But yeah, no, seriously, yeah, this is an exciting time, and if you want to get involved, then you can, and there are all sorts of opportunities for you to get involved, to improve your writing, to get your writing out there, to make a name for yourself. So, I started out as an anon who had absolutely nothing behind me, no reputation behind me, and I've really made something, and you can too if you have the determination and you apply yourself. So get to it.
Absolutely. Thank you for being on, Ren. It was a pleasure. The third time is the charm, and I think we are charmed here.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure, Dan.
Absolutely. Thank you.